record.
Play on the clock.
We're recording right now, so please leave the message after the beep.
Clap three times here. Clap in front of the camera.
Clap, 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 clap. Is that good?
A little louder. I need to be able to... There we go. That'll do it.
You good?
Yep. Because when you're off frame, I'm like, I need to see your hands coming together.
That's the thing about having to fit the both of us in one frame versus...
Yeah.
You get your own.
You got all that
live James reaction
it's
footage.
Free real estate.
It's free real estate. It's just kind of space we're left with here.
Yeah.
I've thought about like, since I can't get all the monitors to connect, moving those into the storage room and then pulling this desk out maybe a little bit. But at the same time, there would be run the risk of like accidentally knocking something into that corner back there, which would be a pain.
Mm.
And it also reduces the traffic hallway audibly gestures at already small walkway towards Bryant's desk.
Yep.
And plus, you just don't have that same aura if you remove 4 of your 10 monitors.
There are some major aura points because it adds to the the shock and awe of the space when people come over. Because the computer's typically off when they come over, so they don't know that all 10 monitors don't work.
They don't know they're not all connected. Stands in corner of the party.
Yeah.
We totally know they're not connected.
Yep.
We never see them on. You just need to buy a new graphics card, a second graphics card, so that you can plug all the rest of the monitors into it.
That's all it should take, really.
And then what would you use them for?
Doesn't
matter. more meme wallpapers.
Yeah, because I have to have more screens to show off the 1,200 odd memes I have in that folder.
Oh my
and counting.
My goodness.
Accumulated over the last, 6, 7 years. So it's not as if... Okay, yes, I collect a lot.
You're doing about 200 memes a year.
Yeah, that's not unreasonable.
That's a decent pace.
That's fewer than there are days in a year.
Yeah, it's like
200
one every
MPY?
2 out of every 3 days or so.
Mm-hmm.
You acquire a new meme.
I'm but a simple farmer. I'm a subsistence meme farmer. I only take what I need that day. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less. I don't want to overstress the land and take too much from it.
And you haven't had to take any meme subsidies from the government yet?
Nope. I still have my integrity.
Very cool.
I take my memes straight from only the most bespoke artisanal sources.
Fresh, organic, free-range memes.
Yep. It ain't much, but it's a simple life.
It's honest work.
It's honest work.
Man of your talents.
It's a peaceful life.
And our season 2's nearly upon us.
Yeah, looking forward to more of my favorite Imperial middle manager having his weird little adventures and meeting K2SO for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be a cool episode.
Chronologically?
Chronologically, yes. I want to see the origin story of K2SO.
Yep.
And it looks like it should be good. It's like the last... Okay, not the last. There's a Mandalorian movie coming out in a couple years that I'm like, okay, I'll go see that. But
yeah,
that and this are the last like Star Wars projects that I'm legitimately excited about. Because the rest have been, I don't know, Skeleton Crew I've heard good things about, and maybe I'll check out at some point, but it's not like I need to watch it. And if you're a Star Wars thing, and the Nathan doesn't need to watch it...
it's probably not good.
You goofed.
You goofed.
Yeah.
And part of your goof was the Acolyte, which completely was like, okay, you're off the rails now.
Yep. So long, Kathleen Kennedy. She got yeeted.
It will be by the end of the year.
Yep.
And it'll probably be... why do I keep blanking on the man's name?
Dave Filoni.
Dave Filoni. It'll probably be Dave Filoni, and
potentially
that's in charge.
We can hope.
Mm-hmm.
Dare we hope that Dave Filoni will.
now
more Ahsoka stuff.
Now introducing 6 more animated series that we still do on a volume set for some reason.
I'd be down for more animated Star Wars, frankly.
Yeah.
I think that would be a better use of like legacy characters than like trying to recast them or deep fake them.
Yep.
Like follow up the Solo movie that was kind of just okay and do like an animated show about young Solo with all the same like actors reprising their roles as the voices. I'd be down.
Could work. Because, I mean, the library of stuff to catch up on for the interested fans is already so huge at this point. Why not add like a few more days worth of content to catch up on, you know?
I mean, it's like, it's kind of interesting. There's like the mainstream, like you watch the movies, you only need to watch 6 movies to get what Star Wars is about, right?
There are only 6 movies.
Yep.
There are 7.
Nope. There's Rogue One.
Yep.
And
7.
Solo's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So like
7.5.
Yeah, 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
So no, the 6 main movies and then Rogue One, like you didn't even need to watch Rogue One. It's kind of that's like a good like dip your toe into wider universe stuff, but
Just
like
very entertaining.
Yeah, very very fun. I kind of like the way that Andor kind of built on how Rogue One took the more serious war film approach to prequel era or original trilogy era Star Wars.
Yep.
And like kind of took it even further with like the just very seriously as just a rebellion origin story show. I went into Andor with no expectations, having come off of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan being disappointed, and was surprisingly like satisfied with it.
Mm-hmm.
They made me care more about a random Imperial like enforcer middle management man than the Boba Fett show made me care about Boba Fett.
Or the cyberpunk motorcycle gang.
They should have been a Coruscant gang. If they wanted that idea, that's a Coruscant. They have the Coruscant aesthetic. They would have fit in on Coruscant at Dexter's Diner. They don't belong on Tatooine because Tatooine it's Boba Fett's a mess.
It
The
is.
Boba Fett show is a mess. It didn't know what it wanted to be.
No.
And I'm sad.
Yep.
Obi-Wan knew what it wanted to be. It just also
It
was
wanted
forced.
to be a
it
movie.
wanted to be a movie. It was forced to be a show.
Yep. Alas.
Born to lock in, forced to dilly-dally.
Precisely. Yeah, it just brings me back to watching Rogue One in the theaters back when you could still go to a movie a month after it released. Because streaming, at least for Disney properties, was not yet like that.
It wasn't streaming wasn't a pipeline yet. That was really kind of a pandemic thing.
Things more or less still followed like the schedule. Stuff would release on
came out on
streaming around
streaming.
the same time it would come out on DVD, which would be sometimes 6 months after a movie had released.
Which gives
That
you
was like sort of the standard.
Yeah.
And then it got a little faster. Like, dang, they got DVDs out fast nowadays. And now it's like, movie came out 2 weeks ago. It's on streaming.
what?
The movie is out in stores before the movie is finished.
Yep. So that's interesting to see the frightening pace of evolution over the last 6 odd years or so, or whenever. Let's see, Rogue One that came out, was it late 2018?
It
17?
was after. It was between 7 and 8.
Okay, yeah, so that would have been 2016.
16-ish.
Yep.
But it can't have been in 16 because Rogue One is a better movie than La La Land, and I firmly contend that La La Land is the best movie that came out in 2016, so it can't have come out in 2016.
No, and
'cause I
17
went through the list to make sure that I could back that claim up.
And didn't 17 come out? Or wasn't 17 when Force Awakens came out?
No, Force Awakens came out in 2015.
Oh, 15.
Yep.
Okay.
I want to say it was 2016 because it would have been like, it was like in December. It was like late. It was winter time.
Oh.
I do remember that much.
All right, Jamie,
Or
pull it
I'm,
up.
or I'm completely misremembering.
James, pull up the clip.
I could be completely misremembering.
I don't have.
All I know is I still lived with Ben at the Newman Center at the time.
And actually, I think. Oh yeah,
It
because
was 2016.
Wow.
You can still like La La Land better. I won't be offended.
I don't. That's the thing. I don't.
Oh,
It's very
peculiar.
close, but
Interesting.
dang.
my hottest take in the world has been pulled out from under me.
A moment of
What else
silence
came out in
for
2016?
Riley's hot take.
Nothing. That's why I always held that La La Land was the best movie that came out in 2016.
Because barely anything came
Because
out in
nothing
2016.
came out in 2016. Like, there's just nothing good.
I mean,
Except for
there's
those
probably
two.
some Marvel project that came out that year, I'm sure.
Probably
I'm
all right.
sure.
Um,
That was the year
Was that
before
Civil War?
Endgame, wasn't
Oh,
it?
so that would have been when the
Civil War was 2018.
Captain Marvel
Right.
came out. So
Right.
yeah, no,
So, yeah.
doesn't matter. Marvel doesn't factor into it.
Captain Marvel was much after 2016, I want to say.
No, I thought like it was before Civil War was 17. No, not Civil War. I mean, Infinity War was 17, right?
Marvel films
2019.
Oh, 2019. Okay.
2016. Doctor Strange, Civil War, and Doctor Strange and Civil War came out in Captain America: Civil War came out in 2016.
Both Doctor Strange and Civil War are kind of highlights of that
Marvel's
phase of
Luke
Marvel.
Cage and Deadpool and X-Men Apocalypse also came out in 2016.
X-Men Apocalypse was aggressively mediocre.
Yeah. So in terms of actual
There was probably some decent
movie, like
cluster
film
things.
that came out in 2016, La La Land is about it.
And it's also like non-franchise, so it's like that
Right.
gives it an edge of like being distinct and
In a
distinguished.
time where non-franchise films weren't really rising to the top at that point,
No.
and still haven't attained that level of.
It's less that they haven't been attaining that level, it's just that they have been smothered.
Yeah.
Franchise films are like what is pushed, and then smaller, more creative projects just don't. They get tiny releases that kind of pop and fizzle, and the people latch onto them that like them, and then everyone else will ignore them because they forgot they existed
You
because they weren't
misunderstand
aggressively
your
marketed.
significant other in the kitchen, and you burn the spaghetti
Exactly.
because you used to have dreams. It was rather cathartic to bust that one out on the friend group when we watched La La Land a few weeks ago.
That was very fun.
Good times. I'm kind of enjoying our little trend of movie nights.
Yeah.
That's been kind of a fun development. I mean, it kind of winds up being once a month, just the way things work out. But
It's just a good way to excuse to have people over, sometimes for food, and then
usually for food.
Sometimes.
We have to
we
feed.
have. Oh
We
yes,
have-
we have to feed
There's
them.
the certain friends that we have to feed every
Yes,
single time.
because they don't eat otherwise.
Famously. But actually. But yeah, no, that's been good because we've watched La La Land, and then before that we watched Fight Club. Stay tuned.
Do we have one before that, or
We
was it
did
just kind
Lord
of
of the Rings.
Ah.
first
Oh
half
yes,
of-
we attempted the first half. We did the first half of the Fellowship.
I wasn't there that weekend for whatever reason. Was that the first week in January when I was out on?
This was like October.
Oh, it was
Or
October.
Yeah, it was like
early
in the
November or
fall.
something.
Yeah, I think you came back after. You
It must have been a weekend I was at home. Or
Yeah.
something.
yeah, something along those lines. I'm
I've
fairly
seen Lord
certain.
of the Rings before several times.
Right.
It's fine.
Yeah, and this was specifically to introduce a friend who has not seen it, and who is still we're trying to talk into. Because let's be real, first, Fellowship of the Ring, like for the uninitiated, it gets going actually pretty quick, but there's just a lot of I don't know what's going on. I don't really know the drama yet.
I think
And they haven't yet fallen in love with the land of food and no taxes. As I love just the whole Shire thing. It brings me peace and contentment.
Concerning hobbits,
Concerning hobbits. Such a great
and
melodic motif.
then there's concerning hobbits. And then
It
there's-
was-
and then there's concerned hobbits.
It was actually really funny. Recently, I've been very slowly reading through the Fellowship of the Ring, and to read the opening chapter where it's like what are hobbits gives you the background. They're like excerpts from a book that like Mariodoc Brandybuck wrote after the fact about the history of pipeweed.
Yeah,
It quotes excerpts from it. It's like, oh, just all this fun, flavorful world building that I kind of had forgotten.
Tolkien being the
existed because I
research
hadn't
nerd that he
read it
was.
since my dad read it to me as a kid.
It's been pretty close to a decade since I've read it myself.
There is there's some of the language and verbiage that give me and the person I'm reading with giggles, though, because there's just some old words that have come to mean different things about, oh, there's strange folk over there. They say this river is kind of the source of all strangeness. And Tom Bombadil lives at the river where it's a very strange person.
Say it. It's gonna fuel my transition.
Oh, okay. Awful queer folk up down by the river.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of awful queer folk,
Where the fuck? I don't know if I want to follow that.
can't deny it.
We're the Palladium Papist. I'm James.
I'm Nathan.
And I'm Riley.
We're off to that. We're off the umpteenth hiatus with a bang. I tell you. We're not going to talk about firewood on the podcast, at least in the Lord of the Rings.
I'm not going to drop another one on the fire.
Nope.
But
yeah, we got
Other
a.
people certainly are.
We're off to a great start.
We're gonna.
It's been a minute
Spicy
since
on
we've
this
last
episode.
recorded a podcast. We're doing a super serial on the Dragon Prince. There's a little fruit fly that's been hanging out down here. Anyway, so yeah, this was a show we started watching about a year ago. Almost.
You guys started watching about a year ago.
Right.
I started watching
together.
like
When did it start
7 years
releasing?
ago.
when it first started coming out.
Yeah.
Because this is the same creative team that was originally behind Avatar: The Last Airbender.
That's correct.
At least like the showrunner and a lot of some familiar voice actors are in there.
The regular producer, Aaron Ahaz, was involved in that. And
So it's like from the people behind that show. So it's why it initially grabbed your interest. I think Netflix produced it from the start, right? It didn't go from something else to Netflix. Okay, cool.
Yep.
I mean, I think maybe.
I mean, they probably tried to shop it around to every animated.
It started out as one of those YouTube Red things that got pulled in, but Netflix has been involved with it. If not from the very, very beginning, at least for the vast majority of its lifetime.
Right.
Yep. So functionally, it's a Netflix original series.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Cool.
Whether it is or isn't.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I guess we can kind of start with the, which is sort of the summary. It's a show. It's how many seasons was it again? 5?
There are 7.
7 seasons. So we're gonna try to condense stuff down.
One for each element in
Yes.
the magic.
There's two
systems.
major arcs in the story, so
Let's lay the groundwork for this world then.
There is a magical land called Zadia, which is
With an X.
with an X. Yeah. I briefly was like, huh? oh yeah. Huh.
Zadia with an X.
Audibly
Spelled with an
audibly
X.
spells an X. A magical land of Zadia in which
Elves, humans.
elves and humans used to coexist and have magic and had a grand old time, and then
The Fire Nation attacked.
the Fire Nation attacked, by which we mean humans and their
Because
greed.
elves and various other creatures in Zadia have access to the primal magic, basically through,
and humans do not.
and they don't.
They certainly don't. We're definitely not retconning that later.
Yep.
Nope, not at all.
Nope.
Not in the least.
It's not going to be a convenient plot point.
We're not doing
in
an
one of our
Artemis
seasons.
Fowl. Wait, their ability was there all along, kind of a thing.
No.
That's definitely not happening.
So the only way that humans have been able to use any kind of magic is they
Dark
were gifted
magic.
dark magic, which is a kind of more destructive form of magic that uses like the
it's
raw
really-
magical ingredients from like harvested from the magical nature. Mm-hmm. So it's
Sucking the life force out of things and repurposing it. Yeah. Just perversions of like pure natural Whole Foods magic that the elves have access to.
And so that's how the humans started the war, and why the elves and the dragons that like rule over Zadia banished them to the other side of the continent and like tore a rift in the land to like separate the two worlds.
Mm-hmm. And among the each there's like different tribes of elves basically, and they all have their own like there's moon shadow elves, there's fire elves,
Like all
there's
from the different sources
sky
of
elves,
magic,
yeah,
right?
water
There's-
elves, etc.
Yeah.
And so you over the course of the show you meet the different kinds, but the ones you need to know about for now are moon shadow elves, who use the power of moonlight to be very stealthy, which is important.
And delusion-y.
Yeah,
I
and
suppose that
delusions.
is a flavor of stealthy.
Yeah. So on the human side of the Great Divide in the center of the continent is the most powerful of the 5 kingdoms, which is the kingdom of Catullus, in which live King
Harrow.
Harrow and
his 2 sons.
His sons. One, Callum, who is his stepson from his marriage to his now deceased wife, Queen. Why am I, man? Like
They don't say her name a lot, so I genuinely don't even know it either.
Yeah.
Dead
Sarai.
Dead mom.
No.
Sarai, yeah.
Yeah, Sarai. Queen Sarai, who is now deceased. And his son that he had was Sarai. Wow. Main character of the show, I'm blanking. Ezrin.
Ezrin.
So they're roughly like, I don't know, 12, 13. And
Callum's about 15.
yeah,
Ezrin's
15.
about
Okay.
12.
Yeah,
Yeah,
at the
they're
start.
in that range. Living a more or less happy life. And also in the castle, you have the Grand Mage of the kingdom, who's basically the human who is in charge of all magic stuff.
All the dark magic stuff, because that's what humans have access
Those are the
to.
magics that there are.
And his
And
family.
they happen to have a Sky Primal Stone,
Yep.
which will definitely not become relevant.
Nope.
No, not in the least.
Why am I blanking?
He has 2 kids.
on the
His
main
oldest
page,
son,
Viren.
Viren,
Viren, and he's got Soren
who is like a knight in the royal guard.
and
Claudia,
yeah.
who is an apprentice dark mage
Yep.
under her father.
So we get the sense that things are not all right. In fact, word has reached the castle that a group of Moonshadow elves are seeking to assassinate the king. And so they're like, okay, well, there's going to be a full moon soon. They're super powerful. We're not going to know what to do about that.
We can't do anything about it. They are going to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to plan and deal with the fallout.
Yep.
And so
and Harrow's like, yep, I guess I should have seen this coming because of our dark past that we will learn over the next few seasons. So yeah, they're kind of caught up in the middle of this. The boys, Ezrin and Soren. Why am I?
Callum.
Man, I'm bad at this. Callum and Ezrin. There we go. The 2 rhymed. They're kind of oblivious. They know something's not quite right because their dad is acting extra affectionate and kind of leaving bad hints. But essentially, he's like, okay, tell you what, boys. Tonight, you're going to go to our country house in the woods and stay there, and I'll send you a letter with instructions on what to do.
meanwhile, the Moonshadow elves that are invading are invading.
Yep.
One of their number is a girl named Rayla. This is her first hunt,
Yep.
and she is the one that accidentally let a human live to go warn the people about the impending
Because even though she's
Moonshadow
an
elf
assassin,
attack.
she is yet to kill someone.
Yes.
And she didn't quite have it in her at that moment. But the group of like half a dozen or so elf assassins all bind themselves magically in an oath to complete their task and kill the king and his bloodline as vengeance for the death of the Dragon King and the presumed death of the Dragon Prince on behalf of the Dragon Queen back in Zadia.
Yeah.
So they've infiltrated the human kingdom and they've made this blood oath basically to complete their assassination.
During the assassination attempt, Rayla gets separated from her group and stumbles across the brothers, Ezrin and Callum.
Because they hadn't left yet like they were supposed to.
Right, exactly. They accidentally, as a trio, as the scuffle unfolds, find the secret workshop of
Viren.
and find that the Dragon Prince egg, the egg of the Dragon Prince, is in the castle.
Had not been destroyed.
Hasn't
It had
been destroyed,
stolen.
and it's just kind of sitting there in the workshop, ready to be like, just kind of held there for a
Rayla's
while.
like, well, I was going to kill you, but as it turns out, this could bring peace between the kingdoms. So now let's take this back to Zadia and give him back to the Dragon Prince back to his mother.
And so they go on that branch of the adventure.
And
the other Moonshadow elves
do the job.
do their job. Half of them get like blown up and
Killed.
defeated by the High Mage Viren,
Mm-hmm.
and then he sends his children to go after
The boys, yeah.
and find the boys now that they're missing.
Yep. Because at that time they don't know that the egg's gone quite yet.
Right.
So the boys are like, well, let's go with the original plan and head over to our family vacation home in the country, basically, and figure out what to do.
So kind of
next.
the first arc of this series is their journey to get the egg back to Zadia and reunite the Dragon Prince egg with his mom.
Yep.
I
And
don't
through
know
the
if we
first
need to go
season,
every step of the way. That'll take
no,
way too long.
first season, basically, they travel to Zadia, and Viren is a scheming old guy. He has to do whatever he thinks is best that for the kingdom, no matter how vile. Which
matter how
leads him
dangerous.
to kind of seize power of the kingdom after the death of Harrow and in the absence of
The princes.
the princes. And he basically takes over and orders them to be killed and sends his 2 kids after them to definitely not kill them. That'd be crazy. Just capture them. Wink, wink.
Also, when they leave the castle, Callum brings with him a primal stone of the sky because he's interested in magic. He just hasn't decided he wants to use
He's
dark
not too
magic.
good at the night stuff and fighting. He wants to use his brains more.
Right. So he has this primal stone. Now, the primal stones are like concentrated, like magical energy of their respective element, whether it's earth, fire, water, sky, stars, whatever. You know?
If you remember in the 21st
Earth, Wind,
night
and Fire.
of September.
But anyway, so he's got this sky primal stone, and he's like along the way picking up little spells, blowing wind around
Runes
and
and figuring
lightning
out
and
how to do
such.
it.
Using definitely not Latin.
No, not at all.
And over the course of time, Rayla's oath, she still hasn't kept it, and this band that she used to magically bind herself around her wrist is slowly getting tighter and tighter and killing. Basically,
It's going to cut off her arm.
it's going to cut off her arm. So it's like this hanging tension there. So in the meantime, Viren is like, all right, I am super distrustful of Zadia, and he's like, all right, this is my chance to unite the human kingdoms and invade Zadia while we have the chance and destroy magic people once and for all so we can be safe forever. So he uses sketchy dark magic stuff to create an evil army and starts marching on Zadia. And over the course of the journey, Rayla realizes that she has quite a fondness for Callum and
Hey, maybe humans aren't so bad as we've been racistly painting them. And he's like, hey, maybe elves aren't so bad as we've been racistly painting them.
they're fighting as hard as I am to return the dragon egg and bring peace back to the land. So, they have some ups and downs, topsy-turvy adventures, but they eventually wind up in the Great Dragon Nest Mountain in Zadia, where the queen of the dragons is resting.
Also,
she's been in grief for however many decades it's been since Avazandum, the king of the dragons, was killed, as it turns out, by Viren and Harrow.
And Sarai,
Yeah.
which is where Sarai died.
Yep.
Yes, as well as other friends.
Yeah. Basically, a chain of events started where Viren needed a magical ingredient to do something. I think it was like to save people from a famine. So they went to go kill a stone talus over in, or fire talus over in Zadia, and that incurred the wrath of the Dragon King protecting the land. Queen Sarai died during that, and Harrow was distraught and wanted revenge, so they went back and killed the Dragon King, and that's what led us to now. And now Harrow's dead, and they're trying to make things right. And ever since then, the Queen of the Dragons has just been distraught and hanging out. But along the way, the egg hatches.
Well, it gets dropped in a frozen lake, and it's like, oh no, the light's going out, it's going to die. And so Callum breaks his primal stone to let the pure sky thunder
Zaps it with
energy zap
lightning.
it back to life and let it hatch, because it's a sky lightning dragon.
And out comes a baby dragon, and it turns out that Ezrin can talk to animals.
Well, Pete, that's always been kind of a thing he's been
Been
able
well
to do.
established to
Right,
this point.
but he's like, I keep telling you I can talk to animals. Let me prove it. So now they're like, okay, we believe you now. So there's like a whole like side quest where they go to like the moon nexus or whatever. Nexus points exist in the world where or elemental powers are connected to the
Particularly
earth or
potent.
whatever. So that'll become important much later in the show. Anyway, so they've arrived, and then also Viren's evil army has arrived at the mountain to claim the Dragon Prince's magic and suck it out of him and basically make Viren super powerful and destroy Zadia. So they decide, no, we want peace. We don't want this to happen. And along the way, their aunt Amaya is also, there's the whole gay thing with the fire elves, which we don't really talk about, but
We will talk about.
Well, we
it.
will.
yeah.
But like she shows up and sides with the elves to try and stop Viren. And so
Ezrin-
there's a big war fight thing
Yep,
that goes
Ezra
on.
manages to call for aid with the help of some critters, and they stop Viren's army and throw him off of the top of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And Soren has a change of heart and becomes a good guy because he hates seeing all the dark magic his dad's using, whereas Claudia has become, their mother left them when they were very young, and she wants everything to be like their dad, so she gets deeper and deeper into dark magic and does sketchier and sketchier things, but she thinks she's still a good person.
And then also Callum, having lost the Primal Stone, actually manages to, allegedly the first time in human history,
Tap into
the
nexus.
primal energy
Yeah.
and become a wind mage
An
without a primal
actual
stone.
legitimate wind mage without
Allegedly.
using dark magic.
Allegedly.
He fiddles with dark magic a little bit here and there and gets a sick vision quest and whatever, by which I don't mean it was cool. I mean he was sick and had a vision quest. Also, during the time Viren's scheming, there's this mysterious mirror that was in the treasure hoard of the Dragon King that he's been trying to figure out what its deal is this whole time because there's runes on it. And it turns out it's basically a Skype to this strange chamber where a starry-looking elf is hanging out reading books. And so the elf mimes
Viren.
him into getting VoIP, and they are able to communicate. And it turns out that this guy is a dark mage named... we just watched this show.
Erebos.
Yeah.
He had the entire back half of the show named after him.
Mm-hmm.
Harry Potter and the Mystery of Erebos.
Yep. And so he's been kind of in a little bug in Viren's ear and
Literally.
teaching him how to get better at dark magic and all this stuff and kind of using him. Because, yeah. And so, yeah, at the end of the season, Viren dies.
Yep.
And season 2 picks up.
Nope, season like 3.
This is
3. Oh, yeah.
He dies.
This is end of the first arc, beginning of the next arc.
Yep.
Because
So-
the first arc is getting the Dragon Prince home. Second arc is the Mystery of Erebos.
Viren's not dead.
Viren
He is
dead.
surely alive.
Yes. Well,
Living on the his
So-
side, roaring like a lion.
I forget which episode, but if you are so inclined, go watch our Twilight Princess playthrough. There's some fun bits.
Is that one out yet?
As of the recording of this, no, but it will be soon. Yeah. Anyway, so Erebos taught Claudia some dark magic stuff to bring Viren back to life, but they have 1 month to finish the magic ritual to keep his life permanent, basically. So they're on a time limit, and it's been like a year since he
Like
died.
a couple of years.
Yeah, and he finally wakes up from his coma.
There's like a time skip, and things happen in the time skip. They don't fully explain in
No.
the show itself. Rayla and Callum have a falling out, but then she comes back, and it's like, I was on an adventure by myself.
Oh yeah,
but
Callum and Ezrin return to the kingdom, and Ezrin becomes the king,
Yes,
crown king.
Callum
so
the
now,
High Mage.
yep, Callum's the high mage, and so Ezrin's the boy king, and Callum is the boy mage, and the girl elf is absent. Oh yeah, she somehow, I forget how exactly, got out of her bind.
I think it was something about they went back to her home village, but it was a whole thing.
Yeah, she was banished from her home village because she didn't complete the blood pact or whatever, but she still managed to get free. Anyway, and she and Callum are in love, and that's the thing.
Yes. Except because she left, they're all like, "Oh, will we? Won't we? Oh no, we need to spend the next several seasons. Will they? Won't they? Well, people ship us.
People were really enthusiastic about this ship when it started out.
That was a funny
So
self-aware episode.
I forget what the conflict of the second arc is, how they discover, because now there's peace between Zadia and the human kingdoms, tenuous but still a good piece. Like they're starting a memorial and reconciling with the Queen of the Dragons. And Zim, short for
Ozymandias,
and the Dragon Prince and
the Human Prince.
The Human Prince are friends now. So things are looking up. But over
the course of the show, after a couple adventures, they discover that Erebos is planning a comeback, and that
he's really bad news.
He was like the original person who gave humans dark magic. He is a Star Touch elf, which is like a cosmic entity that
when their stars
can't
align,
truly be killed, but they
incarnate in the world, and you really can't kill them because you can kill their mortal form, but they'll just come back in 7 years
after their planets align.
Basically. So he's got a bone to pick.
Venus is in retrograde.
Yeah, in the Age of Aquarius or whatever, and. So they're like, crap, well, we got to stop him. And Claudia's like, I need to free Erebos because he can make my dad's life, coming back to life, permanent. And my dad and dark magic are the only things I care about.
And then, meanwhile, Viren's like he had a literal, not a near-death experience, literal death experience. And he's like, you know what? This changes my priorities a little bit. Maybe being a good dad doesn't mean corrupting your daughter with dark magic so that she's dependent on it.
And I'm kind of annoyed with my Nissan Leaf twink daughter's boyfriend. The whole thing.
That's a whole thing.
Yeah.
That's a whole thing.
The number of times I've said twink on this podcast.
You are the primary purveyor of that term.
Yep.
On this podcast.
I've been known to employ it.
I use it once or twice too. But
basically it becomes a race to figure out, okay, so how did Erebos come to be locked in this giant pearl thing? And
where is it hidden? How do we destroy it?
How do we understand the lyrics and figure out what besides good vibes and rock is going on here? Oh, wait, that's Pearl Jam. Anyway, so how do we stop him from escaping? So basically the next couple seasons is they find the people who are responsible, the dragons, and these mages and people from the past were able to seal him away in this pearl thing. And they're like, okay, so we have to find it and stop the bad guys from getting it. So they managed to do that a couple times, but then also stuff happens. And there's this weird butterfly golem creature that, because it turns out like a blood sacrifice of a child or something is required to keep Viren's life permanent or whatever, and so that qualifies. And Claudia completes the ritual and dives further into dark magic and keeps Viren alive. But Viren's like, well, I need to pay for what I've done, so I am leaving you. I love you, Claudia, but I'm going to jail. I'm going to go to jail. Time for me to go to jail now. And Claudia's like, crap, everything I care about is my dad, and he's gone, and he left me here, and I'm all screwed up because of dark magic.
I'm just a kid, and my world is a nightmare.
Yep. And
I need a new surrogate dad.
Erebos will now be my surrogate dad.
Hello, Erebos Dad. I will release you from Pearl Jam.
Yep.
You have been jammed into a pearl. I'm going to remove you from your Pearl Jam.
So, Ezra, Callum and Rayla and Ezra are like, okay, well, we have to figure out how to make Erebos gone permanent. Hey, there's this thing that might kill him spoiler.
A mythical item that can kill a Star Touch elf permanent.
They have Pearl Jam, and they're like, we have to keep this locked away.
Pearl Jam hidden.
Yep. But
and there's also
the thing about Erebos is he can manipulate mages, especially ones that have used dark magic. So Callum he
dabbled with dark magic just enough for Erebos to have a line into him, and he is very uncomfortable with that.
Yep, and he's powerful enough to reach through the pearl and screw with them. So so they're like, all right, we're going to make a fake pearl out of candy and the real pearl and do a switcheroo. So
and the real pearl will definitely not be the friends we made along the way.
Yep, absolutely
not.
The friends that Claudia made along the way. But so they're like, okay, there's these sky elves that might be able to help us figure out how to destroy this pearl. or something, at least we can give it to them and nobody will ever be able to reach it and set them free. So they go visit these sky elves and learn stuff about magic and whatever, and Callum heals himself
And learn about moral relativism.
Yeah, your truth and all that crap. Callum manages to do a repentance ritual and free himself from his connection to dark magic, so sort of.
Temporarily until he does it again because the extraneous circumstances called for it.
Right.
That's the whole thing.
Him and Rayla
His
finally are
moral
like,
sins are alleviated, but he has not yet been remitted of temporal punishment.
yep. Yeah.
There's lots of really good Catholic analogies in some of this stuff that
Yeah.
we'll get into. But
Him and Rayla finally agree to commit to actually being a couple, whatever that means. And stuff is good. But long story short, Claudia manages to get a hold of the real Pearl.
Bust out Erebos from his jam.
And now he's a
then-
giant.
And now
now
he's
he's
big.
a giant, and he's unleashing his doomsday plot.
His doomsday plot
Turns
involves,
out-
blotting out the sun and opening up the world of the regretful dead spirits out of the moon
Of the
nexus.
Grateful Dead.
Of the ungrateful dead.
Ungrateful
That's why
Dead,
they're
yeah.
still in the moon nexus.
All Erebos wants is to punish the world that took away his daughter.
Yep.
Because that happened, and he's very
His
sad
daughter
about it.
made a mistake and gave humans dark magic, and or at least showed a human how to do magic. And the powerful Star Touch Council was like, "That was bad. Your daughter has to die now." He's like, "I hate the council.
I hate
This
the
is
council and
outrageous.
the entire
It's
cosmic order for which they
I'm
stand."
gonna make everyone suffer. So I'm going to kill the sun."
About the sun.
Yeah.
Um,
So that's his
so
whole big plan.
the final conflict, they're kind of caught between several bad choices, whether it's Ezrin coming in with the Star Touch sword thing, which isn't
Nova
really
Blade.
going, the Nova Blade, which isn't really going to kill him. It's just going to reincarnate, kill him.
They were going
Then
to
you've got
seal him
Callum,
into a Pearl
who got
Jam
like a
again.
magic coin that was used to imprison some of the dark elves or the shadow elves that came to kill the king. He has like this empty magic coin that he can use to seal Erebos away in the coin, and then kill himself so that the so that Erebos couldn't control him to bring him back out. And then also you've got all of these big choices that the kids could make to
Because simply killing
finally
him-
settle this battle.
Because they were going to seal him back up in a pearl like he was, but the mage elf
made the
that
pearl.
did it, Claudia killed her
Yep.
to prevent that. So they're in a real pickle.
So no, we have these kids who can make these really big decisions that like are really defining to their characters, and then the ghost of the Dragon King and then the Dragon Queen both explode and bring Erebos with him, and so he'll reincarnate in like 7 years, and
Yep.
they're dead.
So
and
they sort of kick the can down the road.
Yeah.
So we can make a sequel series and milk more content out of it.
Yep. And Ezrin has this big final speech about how we're going to create a new. Along Katalis got destroyed in Dragon
Yeah,
Attack.
there was a dragon attack. Talos got destroyed. The Sun Kingdom's rebuilding from stuff that happened in season like 4 or something.
Yep.
It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. And he makes a speech to all the characters about how we're going to make a new land where humans and elves can live together, and it will be for everybody. And he says it half to animated characters and half to PNGs that are interspersed throughout the crowd. and sequel bait. And that's
the end of the show.
yep.
Also, Dad might not be dead. He might be a bird.
Harrow
Yep.
might be a bird.
Yep.
That would make me really mad if Harrow was a bird.
I think he is a bird.
But I think he's a bird, and it
And-
makes me angry.
Yep.
Yep. Agreed.
Because at the very beginning of the show, rewind way back, Viren's like,
I have a way out so that they can kill you, but not kill you.
he basically is like, I can.
I'm going to switch brains with the bird.
Yep. So they'll kill you, but they won't kill you. They're not going to make kill you here. So there's some side plot stuff. Rayla gets her gay dads back and decides to let her parents die forever instead.
There's a whole lot of
There's a whole lot of gay.
There's a
Yeah.
whole lot of side plots.
Why
is
are
what
they
I'm
so
gonna
much
say.
gay?
I was trying to reel this in. Like we need to keep this
Yeah.
somewhat concise. So we can actually talk
There's
about
the whole
the stuff
whole
when we
B
talk
plot
about
with the
stuff.
Sun Kingdom and how like Viren like killed their sun nexus and made it into a dark magic thing, and now like there's a refugee camp and they fall in gay love there, and it's this whole thing, and the
There's like an
bigoted
uprising of like we are the traditionalists.
Ugandan little brother decides to
I thought he was more of a, Algerian little.
Yeah, they are
He's
kind of
got
Algerian.
French accent with the
Yeah.
African.
her Congolese little brother is he's not on board with it. Why are you gay? You should not be queen. Where do we start? What do we want to talk about? Should we just say cool stuff we like first?
Let's like hit all the themes, just like put them on the table, and then we can perhaps dive into
one of the biggest themes in the show.
Besides gay.
It's bigger than that theme, actually. I mean, that theme ties into it, but point is, they make a big point about intergenerational trauma and hatred and what people hand down from one generation to the next, from their experiences of war and hatred, instilling that in their kids who have war and hatred and it's back and forth, revenge for this, revenge for that.
It's up to
endless
the kids
cycles
to break
of violence.
It's up to the kids to break the cycle and make peace
as best they can, one thing at a time.
Yep.
That's like probably the biggest theme is like intergenerational trauma and the cycles of violence and war and racism.
Because they have to deal with Rayla being their friend, and yet her people are responsible for killing their dad, who they loved.
Like when she brings one of her surrogate dads back, he talks to Ezra's like, yeah, I was the guy that killed your dad. And he's like, well, I'm mad at you now.
I hate you.
I'm like this pacifist kid who likes eating jelly tarts, but
this is too much.
This is too much for me.
Now I am filled with murderous intent.
I.e. justice for a capital offense. And that's bad for some reason.
And so
it's inconsistent for his character. That's why it makes me annoyed.
Yeah.
They work that out eventually. And also that's where they're like, oh, by the way, your dad sounded like a bird when I killed him. He might have actually been a bird because we need a sequel bait.
Yep.
We need to make everyone mad.
Oh, Viren died in the dragon attack and sort of redeemed himself and reconciled-ish with Soren.
I think Viren had the most interesting story arc and was the most interesting character in my opinion.
Yep. I
think like him going from I'm just doing what I know. Dark magic is what he knows, and he's doing everything he can for the betterment of his people, regardless of what happens as a consequence.
And then he gets kind of drunk on power and does some screwed up stuff and has to deal with the consequences.
Even though his intent is to make life better for his people, particularly his close family, he will do anything to make that happen. You know, adopts this ends justify the means attitude, and indeed sort of grows to have this relationship with dark magic where he can't give it up because it's so deeply intertwined with his protecting his family and his own sense of self and worth and all of these things. It's so deeply tied to him that he can't.
And he passes that on to Claudia.
Well, both of his children respond to it differently. Claudia embraces it and like really runs with it, whereas Soren can see it corrupting his sister and see it corrupting his dad and be like, I don't want a part of this. Dark magic may have saved me from like my chronic illness as a child, but that doesn't mean I approve of the methods you use to get to there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really interesting to see that
Wedge murdering his old mentor and driving their mother away because he's using dark magic and has unalterably like transformed him into somebody she no longer recognizes, and that has huge negative effects on Claudia and Soren as they grow up, and leads Claudia to form unhealthy attached to her dad and his use of dark magic in unhealthy ways, and ultimately brings her downfall.
It's like basically dark magic is like his drugs.
Yep.
And the effects his mistakes and his dependencies have on his family and how they inherit some of those problems in, again, cycles of generations of abuse and trauma and such, right?
Yeah.
That kind of
and he sort of sacrifices his life as sort of atonement and during the the Sun King's attack on Katalis to save people and drive off the dragon.
And because that death experience gave him what did I die for?
Yep.
What was I doing?
What was I living for?
What was I living for? Is it... And then over the course of his like journey with his daughter, it's like, you know what? I don't need to live forever. I just need to live well for once. And she's like, no, you need to live forever because I need you to live forever because I am emotionally incomplete without you to stabilize and ground me.
Yep. I'm
Because-
going to make this dark elf guy we busted out of a Pearl Jam, and he'll be my new surrogate dad now.
Mm-hmm. But no, I just think that character arc and journey for Virion is like probably the best executed thing in the entire show, front to back.
Yep. Yeah, and then what would be some other major themes, or if we kind of covered it?
Those are like the broad strokes big ones, but
Yeah, that's mainly it.
I would say the other major theme is like truth and like what is truth and how truth moves people. They have this sort of dark magic is bad, and they establish like dark magic takes something that doesn't belong to me.
It twists and perverts.
It's not so much that it perverts as that it takes something that doesn't belong to me. You got to keep in mind that they're operating under modern sensibilities here, and you see it in a lot of things that go on in this show. I'm establishing what they're putting out, and I'm going to say in the end that I think it's kind of silly because it undermines some of the points they're trying to make. And there's lots of exploration of what it means to be something, what it means to belong to a people, what it means to be in a relationship, what it means to what truth itself means. They're exploring the idea of my truth, kind of the personal driving force of life.
There's like it's a coming of age element to the story,
Right.
and about how much is nature, how much is nurture, how much is my choice.
Right. And yeah, they explore a lot of, especially in the back half of the show, like what are the driving principles of my life? What am I living for? And how do the people I surround myself with, how do I live that well? How do I pursue that in a way that makes sense and accomplishes those goals? And they have an obvious relativistic bent to it, which dissatisfies me, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Being a Catholic, I must reject this, but I see what they're trying to do. And what they're trying to do is like they're trying to stab at arrows. They're trying to stab at the thing that moves me in life. And it's particularly kind of backwards that they use the word truth to say that, because like desire is great. Desire is a gift and something that should be part of our lives as Catholics, but it's also distinct from truth, and truth moderates and informs what I pursue and what I desire. And they're kind of collapsing those things into one concept.
Mm-hmm.
And like at the same time,
'Cause
if everyone needs to find their truth, if they would phrase it, like they're also like from the beginning of the show posing dark magic as this objective evil that kills and destroys everything it touches,
And
including the person who casts it.
And they make Erebos a relatable, quote, hashtag relatable villain.
And they have Terry, who they try to build Terry as this like good guy who's supportive and sympathetic, and you're supposed to kind of agree with him. And he's like supporting Claudia. He's just like, you gotta find your truth, Claudia. It's like, my truth is relentless, reckless murder, using other people and destruction. That's my truth. And he's like, great, you found your truth, and I'm going to support that until it's no longer convenient for my personal truth. It's like, how are you in one breath trying to say that this, which I think is right, that this dark magic, as it's construed, is a deeply perverse thing.
Mm-hmm.
Destructive, reductive of nature, all this thing. I mean, it's evil as we understand
It's
it. It's a reduction of good.
Mm-hmm.
In the later parts of the show, they talk about how it used to not just be the land of Zadia, but the entire world that was full of magic and magical creatures and stuff. It's just the part of the world the humans got locked to was raised and stripped of all of its like magical resources by the warring factions of mages trying
now
to
there's magic nukes.
and now there's magic nukes.
But yeah, and then they turn around and say, "Oh, but this is like admirable that a person tries to find their truth."
Yeah.
It's like, how can you hold these things together? How can you say that this thing is
It's
intrinsically
incoherent.
bad, that destruction is bad, that killing is bad, and then try in the other breath to say that whatever I believe to be right is right? It totally undermines the whole Viren arc. Like,
Yeah.
and this is just the frustrating thing about moderns is that they can't seem to be moved by this contradiction. To suggest on the one hand that there is things that are objectively bad and harmful and destructive, and that things that are harmful and destructive are reprehensible.
Yeah.
And then at the same time encourage it in a way that just is totally inconsistent.
Ezra, and I know this elf killed our dad, but he's gay and he said he's sorry.
He spent half the show being a presumed dead, like every...
Locked in a coin.
There was this funny streak in the middle of the show where all the gay people died.
Yeah.
It was like, how long are they going to keep this up? They started having to bring people back because apparently, I don't know, Netflix got mad or something. I don't know.
Maybe. Who knows?
But I was gonna say about the whole. Oh, you brought up Erebos' like backstory, tragic backstory. There's a degree to which sometimes
You do need a motivation in a villain.
do you like sometimes I don't mind it being a little opaque or it being like just a force of nature kind of evil
Like,
thing.
or this guy just sucks.
But I also don't mind having an explanation.
Right.
But there's a difference.
don't really-
There's a difference between providing an explanation for why somebody became this way and creating an excuse.
Yeah, it turned into an excuse because he could have been like, right, yeah, it's understandably he's in grief, but he's doing the wrong thing and be using his grief to
Like,
destroy and sorrow
Having
to
the
destroy.
grief spiral into a destructive hate and like letting him be just this hardened, bitter, unfeeling, like manipulative dude who has no feeling for anybody and is just using them as pawns. Perfect parallel for where Viren was heading. On his, he would have become.
They didn't quite go
Erebos.
away from it, but they didn't like they
They
waffled.
they tried to tiptoe the line. They're like,
yeah.
explaining why Erebos is the way he is, but also like trying to make it sympathetic. And I think it serves the point, but I think it doesn't. It's not nuanced enough, I would say. Like they're trying to. It ties into the hurt people theme.
Yeah.
Like Erebos is fundamentally, torn apart by the loss of his daughter, and he continues to. Well, he initiates in many ways the cycle of violence and death that the world has been in for a long time, and has a mind to perpetuate it. So
They
in
kind of
that
moved
respect,
away from his
like,
cunning and wickedness after
Right.
a certain point.
they did for a while, and then they started to get back to it at the very, very end. But like,
Yep.
But like he actually, when Claudia was like, "Can you be my dad now?" He like
You remind me of my dead daughter, sure.
right, and
Let's pick on Terry and manipulate him, and that'll be how we're still evil.
we'll unite. We'll have some father-daughter bonding time by manipulating your boyfriend.
your twink boyfriend, who asserts that he always knew he was a doe.
Wait, what?
Yeah, he is a buck. He's like, I always knew I was a doe. And I'm like,
What are we doing?
What are we doing?
What is going on here?
Yeah, are you a plant elf or are you what are you? Yeah.
Why is Claudia okay with that? Like, what is she? Doesn't even seem to. They don't acknowledge
They
it.
say
They
it
don't
in one
do
thing.
anything.
It's like you could have removed that, and his character wouldn't have changed.
Right.
Why was this important to bring up in one scene? Because no.
Well, you just have to shove that in there. There's other characters for whom their sexuality and identity actually play into the way their characters develop. This is not the case.
Yeah.
And it's like
I think everyone would have
this is
rather
not defense.
have seen like would have rather seen Callum and Rayla's relationship instead of all of the all of the shoehorned gay relationships they spent way more time with.
But we want the teasing drama of the will they won't they, so people can keep shipping, so people can keep watching and making fan cams of these two together on like the TikToks.
I don't care how much you self-aware joke about it. You kind of just
It's also just the long running show formula to like never always hedge things. It's like, stop. Can we just have something that's like resolves and is stable for more than an episode, please?
We're just going to spend 3 seasons of Amaya and Elf Queen are gay and want to get married, and we're just going to spend 3 seasons on that conflict, like the entire B plot, and that's just kind of a waste of time.
There were significantly fewer dragons and princes per minute of screen time in the back half of the show.
The more they focused on that, and like the whole Sunfire Elf Civil War thing, like made it more tolerable, I guess.
But there was like the whole like, we have a proud history, sister. We cannot abandon our traditions. And there's like cycles of violence and generation. What do you take from the past and what do you build in the future?
All the Kareem's treachery and stuff just builds up to him being squished by Erebos and like
very anticlimactic.
Yeah.
Like, you built up him as a character and as a force and as a thing, and for the entire thing, back half of the show, and then he's just unceremoniously squashed. And I'm like,
yep.
Why? Why?
Yeah.
I mean, there's
if
something.
this was like the Erebos reveal moment, that could have worked. Just as here's this guy who's been cunning and scheming and powerful, and like in comparison to him, like in comparison to Erebos, he's nothing.
Yeah.
He's an ant.
And there's also
But they didn't do that.
the theme of like his desire for destruction, for getting even, for war, for like being the proud warrior people that hated humans for generations, and that last final scheme to betray his sister and get his throne back being his own demise.
That
like
works
being
all right.
Self-destructive in that way.
Yeah, that works okay.
That works in a way. It just wasn't built up or paid off in that way.
Yeah.
It's there. It's just they don't give much attention to it because by the time he gets squashed, it's all Erebos being big and laughing and cackling maniacally and raising people from the dead and eclipses.
Yeah. So,
And also just they don't really treat the other side of the issue with much thought. They're like, yeah, we just progress, moving on, moving forward, doing the new thing, and without acknowledging that there are good things that come from history and tradition. Like, you have to learn from the past and take what's good while also not being frozen and glued to that for your entire existence. And they say the first thing without saying the second thing.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's like I see there's a lot of that stuff where it's that entire plot had a interesting idea that went nowhere in too long of a time span. I feel like the back half of the show really kind of spun its wheels and didn't really.
They really had to show a gay wedding. And they were really going to build up to it.
really got canceled over and over and over.
And then they spent like an entire episode on it when there's a lot of like, things building
When
up.
there's like an impending like invasion just outside.
Yep.
The show kind of lost the plot after a certain point. Honestly, the first arc is
The best.
good.
Yeah.
Solid.
Not perfect.
Not
but
perfect.
but solid. And they just like took way too long about doing anything in the back half of it.
Like a lot of shows, Or it
and
starts
started
off,
to undermine the themes they had built up in the first half of it.
yeah.
Mhm.
There were things that they did to kind of build out how the magic works in the kingdom and stuff.
And
like,
retcon the fact that Callum was not the first human mage. It's like,
Yeah.
actually, a long, long time ago, there was a human mage. I'm like, okay, so you just invalidated everything that was cool about Callum.
yep.
Mhm.
Callum is no longer a unique character. Callum is no longer doing something that no human has done before, trying to bridge the gap between the way the elves see the world, like integrating with nature, understanding it, being a part of it. Now he's just like, nope, yeah, that's happened before. You're not. What you're doing isn't interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Rayla's character kind of runs out of stuff to do after a while.
Except for Kiss Callum, and then they keep dragging their feet on that too.
Right.
Like the one thing she has left is to be committed to that relationship, and they drag that out for as long as possible. It keeps,
Yeah.
it drags on.
Yep.
As
Yep.
we have been referring to this show as
Dragon Prince.
Drag on, Prince. Because it's dragging on.
Yep. Yeah. The her whole thing with like redemption and like screwing up and finding a way to reconcile like her mission with her new mission and all that stuff is like interesting to start with.
The assassin who hates killing
Yep.
is kind of an interesting thing.
mhm.
And her trying to find out how to be a warrior while also not murdering people.
Yep.
Mhm.
It's a
And
cool arc, because
her mistake being her parents' disgrace. So it's like I'll you, my parents who are in the spirit world thing, and I totally have the opportunity to bring you back. You did your duty. You did everything right. We're going to. I'll just let you die, be still dead, and I'll go get my gay dads.
my gay dad, the other one's still alive.
Yeah, it's like. I feel like she would probably still love her actual parents more than her adoptive parents, like in the grand scheme of things, because she was like a teenager, when her parents died, and
There's like the themes of like her parents like did their job and died honorably,
right,
versus her surrogate dad's the one that's in the coin had unfinished business and was regretful. So like I understand the whole like we need to,
but there's a lot of Netflix
resolve
being
that.
like, we really want you to know where we stand on gay.
Yeah.
We're really going to like rub it in your face here, and we're just like, Netflix, I get it, like shut up, just let me focus on the main story you initially sold me. It gets tiresome.
Because I'm here for the story and characters. Can we stop bloating them out? Goodness knows I'm not here for the animation.
Oh gosh. Yeah, we'll have to get into that. So where do we go from here?
Well, we've been at it for an hour and 8 minutes.
Yeah.
We start doing transcendentals now.
Yeah, let's do that. So what actual truths can we find in the Dragon Prince?
In spite of their efforts to undermine them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Catholic metaphysics.
Yes.
Their goodness is convertible with being, and destroying things is evil.
Yep.
Also, the past is messy. People are messy. Relationships are messy. Right?
Trauma is generational, and it takes somebody
And it
breaking the cycle to bring peace.
It's not going to all happen at once. It's one link of the chain at a time. But it can be done if you're careful and kind.
Yep.
People need to be willing to forgive, endure slights, endure their own insecurity with how things shape out. Like it's a tall order to forgive, especially things that have been so deeply entrenched in history and culture and in one's own personal life.
Yep. Goodness, what is good in the Dragon Prince?
I was also going to mention in the truth section that the way they sort of portray dark magic giving influence over a person is interesting. Like, sin begets sin and like gives the enemy a certain degree of influence over a person. It's not quite to the level of possession, sort of as it's kind of portrayed. Although my sort of pet theory is that it's not actually Erebos controlling. It's sort of Callum's own psychic manifestation, but that's sort of a stretch, and
Yeah.
we don't have time for me to justify that theory in this
Right.
in this section. But yeah, sin gives the enemy a doorway.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, they do kind of move away from that and more of like, oh, it's just Callum's bad side coming out. It's like, it's more interesting when it was Erebos, the Tempter drawing him into darkness,
But it's
sort of
still kind of interesting.
turned a little
as
dualist at the end there.
Psychic exile.
Yeah.
As internal family systems. I don't like the part of myself that is willing to do things that I don't approve of and others don't approve of.
Yeah. With some, with some limitations and stuff that they kind of brought them on themselves. But goodness, what is good in Dragon Prince?
Largely, the relationship between the brothers is really
Callum and Ezrin,
really good, really tight. They really care for each other despite being, a half brother. They're good.
Yeah.
And then honestly, for the most part, Ezrin he's very young, especially for a king, but
Wise beyond his years.
Yeah. And he has just this really good ability to be understanding, to be open-minded, it's like he is really the first line of communication, and he's pushing for communication between the two sides of the continent after he becomes king. He has kind of that virtue of trying to extend the olive branch, which is why it's so out of character for him to be like, okay, you killed my dad, you need to die.
Yep.
But so I would say that's really good. Also his brothership with Zim Avazandum. Also, Soren comes around, and when he comes around, he really comes around.
Yep. Becomes very loyal and sort of facing up to the sins of his family, I suppose.
And
his own personal sins.
His part he had in them, and he eventually comes around to forgiving his dad and helping his dad save the people as they're evacuating as his dad kills a dragon, and gets killed by a dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's also constantly inviting his sister to come back from the dark side. He doesn't resent he's angry and he's frustrated and he's confused, but he's not angry and bitter and resentful toward her.
Right.
He's not allow hatred to consume him.
Mm. So there's a lot of that, just solid examples of good familial love in this show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and ultimately, the main characters, they do a pretty good job of, Callum and Rayla, when they have some healthy aspects to their relationship that they eventually
when they
learn.
decide to will they have some decent communication.
Yep.
Sometimes.
When they are forced to won't they by writers.
Yes.
For reasons that don't entirely make sense given their relationship as it has been to that point.
Right.
It's less good, but that's
more of a flaw, of how the show is written. Yudi. Okay, now we can complain about the animation.
I will say the character designs are good.
The
art
aesthetic.
style,
the art direction was the issue.
art direction, really good. Feels in line with stuff like the Avatar stuff, right?
It's very fantastical. It strikes that whimsical fantasy bone that my frustration with dark fantasy. It's really refreshing aesthetically. It's colorful, it's bright. It has so many unique set pieces, and it's incredibly diverse in its art, and it's just colorful, and I love it.
The character design, the environment design, it's the monsters and creatures.
This is a 3D show. They decided to animate as if it was 2D with low frame rates.
Well, so they don't have the budget for good 2D, so they animate it in 3D because 3D is cheaper. They want to emulate 2D, so they animate it on 2s, and they cel shade it, which would be good, which would be fine.
Has been done well.
They had the budget to make 3D trying to look like 2D actually look good.
See the Spider-Verse movies or Puss in Boots' Last Wish, stuff like that.
Versus Machines, all sorts of stuff. And there are inherent
didn't go that
strengths too. There's unique strengths to 3D animation that they refuse to lean into because they're trying to look 2D.
Fluid motion.
But they also they could do fluid 3D motion, or if they wanted to actually emulate 2D, commit to smear frames.
Yeah.
Commit to the exaggeration of 2D drawings versus the rigidness of a 3D model. Toward the end of each arc, because after the first arc they switched animation teams and it regressed. Toward the end of the first arc, the animation got tolerable, and toward the end of the season in general, it got tolerable again. It got better. It didn't get good. I learned to tolerate it for the sake of the characters and story.
Yeah.
I never liked it.
The first season was rough.
It was so bad. It was single frames of moving through a fight, and it's just bad.
Emotion didn't make any sense.
There were times where in the last couple of seasons they would flash back to things that happened in the first season, and they would use parts from that show. I would shell shocks oh wait a minute, the
this
animation
used to be so much
has
worse.
Gotten better.
This used to be so much worse.
It's so much worse. So that bothered me the entire time.
Yeah.
And it's got to be purely a budgetary thing.
I think there was some misguided stylistic choices made as well.
Yes.
There were budgetary choices made, and there were
because this is what we did on Avatar.
By that, and they refused to mitigate those.
Because the first season of
with the
Avatar,
tools
The Last Airbender, was very choppy and minimalist animation because it was 2D, and that's what made sense with the budget they had in the time. So people being creators of the same show, they brought that same thing. What if we do that here, make these shortcuts here, and it doesn't work because it's not 2D animation,
And again, there are ways to make that work. It's rare that I see it work because the 3D animation is cheaper, and people sometimes want to emulate 2D without actually animating in 2D.
Yeah.
It bothers me in that one Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie. I did not like the 2D characters that were actually just cel-shaded 3D characters, and you can tell it was awful. And there's a new show on Disney Plus, the Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. That looks even worse than Dragon Prince. Apparently it's well written and cool, but my eyes want to bleed.
Yeah, I've seen clips of that. I'm just I don't want
It's
to look at
gross
this.
looking.
Yeah, I don't want to look at this.
The individual frames are fine, but when it starts to move, it's I thought this looks like it looks good for a PS2 game.
Yeah.
It's like the BBC Narnia of animation.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my thoughts on beauty and or lack thereof.
Yeah.
The music's fine. The music's good.
Right. Most of the dialogue writing and art direction, everything is pretty good. The humor comes through in ways that are satisfying here and there.
Occasionally, yeah.
Unity, what brings it all together? Our fathers ate sour grapes, and it is our teeth that are set on edge.
Hurt people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We've never used that as a Unity segment summary before.
It's almost as though that's a human truth that a lot of secular people tap into, and it's also because it's a natural human truth, there is something that reflects God's truth, the truth of God, right?
You see an illustrative idiom. I see a set of instructions. Hurt people. But yeah, that's kind of what it boils down to. Yeah, great effort is required to make peace when generational trauma exists.
But it's worth it.
Yeah. And where's the show going?
I don't know if I care.
We'll see.
We'll see. But
If you manage to make me care, cool.
yeah.
I'm not expecting to care.
Yeah. So on that note, we've run quite a way. So we'll. Yeah, it was a discussion. You know, we got there. A little rusty. I've been out of the podcast saddle for a little bit, but we're back into it. So you can. Thanks for listening to Bloody Papist. We're on Facebook, Twitter. Recently, YouTube's been popping off, not just with backlog episodes, but now the Twilight Princess playthrough has been wrapped. Soon to come will be the Halo playthrough that Nathan did, and there's other stuff will be happening. So stuff that we technically made 3 years ago, we're finally releasing. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, we'll probably be back with more podcast episodes hopefully here soon. So yeah, there's lots of stuff going on over there on YouTube. So we're in podcasts also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. So we will catch you guys again in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.